Sorry about that, guys. Right, enough teasing, guys. We've seen this car covered up and in camo so much. Let me now show you the brand new M2. And look at that. What a totally different beast to the predecessor, to the normal 2 Series. This has got kind of race car, rally car, a bit of M1 vibes to it. Maybe it's the color, I don't know. We have to have a proper look at this because this is very different, but so much MDNA. Guys, welcome back to RBR. I'm Raz, your super-powered host, and today is finally the day. 50 years of BMW M. They've already shown us so many cool things to lust after, right? So the M3 Touring, a car that we never ever thought would happen, it now exists. We've got the M4 CSL, a limited car that is actually the fastest BMW M ever. And then things like the XM, bringing hybrids into the equation and a totally different design language. And they're also plotting a totally electric car, which they've teased us with, going to look something like that. So with all of this fanfare over the more premium stuff, you might get the wrong idea that perhaps they've forgotten what their most important car is. But I promise you, they have not. They're very, very much aware of the position of the M2 in the mind of us customers. So this is your whole new G87 M2, and I'm going to show you everything about this car. We're going to compare it to the predecessor, to the current 2 Series. We're going to talk about what options are available. Of course, I'll peel back the skin and I'll show you everything underneath here, what they've changed like no one else can. But first, let's talk about the M2 a little bit as a model. Undoubtedly for me, I think this is the flagship of BMW M. It's not the M3, it's not the M4, it's not the other premium models. This is the car because it transcends the brand itself. It's such an automotive icon. It's the type of car that you or I would argue less about and agree more on. And because of that, most of us would end up having or wanting one of these in our perfect garage. That's the type of car it is. And for M customers and M fans, it's always been the reliable, safe car that no matter what else they're experimenting with, like, you know, gigantic grills, that thing, the M2 has always stood as the reliable one that we know it exists, so whatever the hell else they do, we've got this pure version of BMW M that we can buy, should we want it, okay? Now one might think that this car has become the most popular model in a very short space of time because we've only had, you know, 1 generation of M2 with this car's predecessor. But that would actually be a lie because the heritage that this car links to is all the way back to the original DNA set by the E30 M3 and has carried that same idea down till the predecessor model of a small, aggressive, bulky looking 2-door coupe with an inline-6 engine, rear-wheel drive and chasing the best possible dynamics for a coupe. And we know how good the predecessor was. So these are huge boots to fill for our car today. How is it going to do it? So when we go back and we look at our original 2 Series, the F22 generation, this was very much based on 1 Series. And it was made very obvious by like the interior, the trim and the technology available in it. Even in the M2, the trim was very basic. It took the LCI to really bring in like engine and other tech hardware and driveline hardware to bring up the competition a little bit, but still very much 2 Series based, even in the best iteration. Our new 2 Series coupe is nothing like that. Unlike the 4-door 2 Series cars that you have, which have front-wheel drive and transversely mounted engines, which none of us really want for performance, our new 2 Series coupe is based on the CLAR platform, which is shared with the 3 and the 4 Series, and wholesale uses the same suspension, chassis, engine, brake technology as our 3 and 4 Series. In a lot of ways, this car is now like a reduced 3 or 4, almost like a 3 Series coupe. Now, the M2, it takes that idea and takes it even further. It takes our brilliant M3, rips out pretty much all the internals from it and shoves it into its own unique little shell. Now, BMW M's goal in this was superiority in dynamics, and they say that they have already bettered the dynamics of the previous generation car. Let's explore how they've done this. First of all is the complete carryover of our engine from the M3 and the M4. So you've got the wonderful S58 inline-6 engine, twin turbo, single scroll turbos though, and they've worked so hard on this. You guys have heard where I've talked about this before. We've got a closed deck construction, lightweight crankshaft, forged pistons. Our cylinder head was printed with 3D printing in order to reduce weight. So lots done in order to reduce weight and make this car, this engine rather, as high revving as they possibly could, as we experienced in the M3. Absolutely fantastic engine in that regard. This engine produces 460 brake horsepower, 550 Newton meters of torque, and a 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds for our 8-speed automatic and 4.3 for the 6-speed manual. So yes, you do get the choice of either the 8-speed Steptronic Auto or the 6-speed manual in this, so purists can rejoice about that. Now, in terms of power, when you compare that to our previous generation of M2, it of course far surpasses the first one. In terms of even the competition, we're talking 50 brake horsepower more. And even in terms of the CS, that's another 10 brake horsepower on top of that car. So really, we're playing with some great horsepower figures here. Of course, the other great thing is how much it differentiates itself from the 240i, which we thought might get close because it was as powerful as the previous M2. But no, there's a massive difference between the 370 odd in that and the 460 brake that we have in this. Interestingly, hasn't got as much power as your M3 competition and M4 competition. Quite similar to the M3 with the manual though. Does that leave room for like an M2 competition or a model higher? I would bet my watch on that. Of course you would. Now in terms of chassis and suspension, like I said, rips everything out of the M3 and the M4. So we've got the exact same front axle, the exact same rear axle. We've got all the same rigidity measures, so the familiar one on top of our engine here that you can see. We've got the trapezoidal plate on the front, another one on the back, all to help with transverse and longitudinal dynamics. More struts at the front and the back, just like we found in the M3 and the M4 as well. Of course, you've got the adaptive M suspension in this, which is aluminium based, but we have specific elastokinematics and a different feel for the M2 versus M3 and M4. And you'll see that translated across your steering, your gearbox, the rear axle itself, everything in terms of feel and calibration has been done specifically to make the M2 feel lighter and more nimble than the M3, which it absolutely has to do. The braking system is exactly the same as well. Ripped straight out of M3 and M4, straight into this car. Exhaust system is the same as well, but it's shorter. Tell you what, would you like to hear what it sounds like? I bet you would. Let me turn the car on now. Now the weight is actually an interesting topic because if you compare it to the 240i, it's a bit lighter by about 50 kg, which probably accounts for, a bit of the X-Drive and a bit more of what this has in terms of rigidity, bringing it up a bit. But it's basically the exact same weight as our M3 as well. There's some kgs in between them. So like I said, in this way, it's not like you're getting a lighter car or something. Yes, it's smaller. Yes, it's stockier. Yes, it looks and will probably feel a lot more go-kart-like. But it is really like you're getting like a small M3 Coupé. It's almost like it's been misnamed. But I kind of like that. Now in terms of design, your 2 Series Coupé was already completely unique versus all the other 2 Series cars, which they did on purpose to differentiate it. But this car is even more different compared to that. The only things shared are the hood, the doors and the boot lid. Everything else, which is essentially the width and the size of our car, is totally different to this car. This car is 11 centimeters longer, 3 centimeters wider, and 1 centimeter shorter than the predecessor as well. So you imagine the stance that the old M2 had on the road. This has got that times some more. I don't know how much of that is going to translate on screen for you guys. I mean, what do you think it looks in this view versus the old one? I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to show you around it in a second. I just want to compare it again to your normal 2 Series, just so you get an idea of how much they've changed. They've changed a lot. The lights, the aggressive body. I need to show you this up close and personal, don't I? Let's get up close to it and let me show you all the details. Look at this, what a huge departure. It's so angular, so different to normal 2 Series. I mean, I predicted this was going to happen in my render with the lights, with the black section here. But even that, it just makes a huge, these lights are that much more likable now than in the normal 2, and it really differentiates this car to it. The bonnet is actually the same, as are our doors on the side and the boot lid, but every single other panel on this car is unique to the M2. So that means a completely unique front end, completely unique wide front arches, a unique wider side sill, and the rear, of course, I'll show you as well. But just start by looking at the wide front arches. Look at those. They're huge, massive. And then you've got these huge, huge air intakes, so squared off, and you see this same type of squareness in the rear in a minute, almost like a jet fighter. The front end, I mean, we call it a small normal grille, but the grille is massive. It's just shaped kind of, you know, normally. But it's really nice. It's really open. You can see the cooling that it's going to be doing for the engine as well. Yeah, I like that front end. It's just, I don't know, it's very different. Then we come around the side. For the first time, we have staggered setup on our M2. So 1920s, like I said, unique, wider side sill. Of course, M side mirrors as well. And then the massive arches. Now, as we come around the rear, like I said, big changes in the rear. I mean, it's probably the most, I think it's going to end up being the most controversial bit, but once I had a bit of time to look around this car, I think this ended up being my favorite part, because the way that they've done the treatment on the rear bumper, to me, it really looks almost like jet fighter-like, something you'd expect on a track car much higher up the hierarchy than this car. It's very angular, it's quite brave, but paired with the wide arches that you have on both sides makes this actually look really, really aggressive. And if you're not a fan of the standard 2, I think it's a big enough differentiation for you to kind of forget that that car exists and to focus a bit more on the M2. So there's multiple parts to this. One is this kind of squared off structure here with our deflector. And like I said, very, very aggressive. You can imagine them using this element, couldn't you, in like a higher up CS or a, you know, CSL, etc. That's a nice little design feature that could definitely be worked upon. Like I said, that ties in beautifully with the really wide and totally unique rear part. So like I said, all of that unique to M2, as are the side sills over there as well. So that tying together gives you a nice wide stance. Diffuser is really different. I don't think you'll see anything like this, the way it cuts into the coloured part of the bumper there, and just its general shape and size. Very unique again to M2. Lights unchanged versus normal 2 Series. They do cut in a bit more because of this being unique. So no major change, like the front lights have changed, but I think it sits a little happier. Maybe you'll think less of the sloth from Ice Age when you look at the M2. I still think that a bigger spoiler on the rear here, perhaps sat there somewhere, would suit this car a bit better. And then the M Performance stuff, that's going to be very, very exciting, isn't it? I think that's going to make this look even more retro and even more exciting when you get those parts on here. That rear 3/4 now then, especially with the staggered setup, I think looks fantastic. It's a big enough departure from like your 4 Series, your 3 Series, your old M2, your current 2 Series, to make the M2 really stand out. And I really like it. I think the rear is actually probably my favorite bit. I'd love to see this in a different color and see what it looks like. I'd love to see it with the performance parts as well. But next, we must look at the interior, which I'll give you a sneak preview of now, because there's a big change in there and you can probably see it already. Now there are some important options. You have the carbon roof for the first time in a normal M2, which of course helps you reduce weight versus the normal sunroof. The other really important choice is seats, because you can actually save some weight. Either you get the basic seat, you get the M seat, which is going to be a bit more comfortable, or you get the carbon bucket seats, which I absolutely love. And of course, these save 5 kg as well, so well worth getting if you want to use this as a track toy. Then there's M Performance parts, and we've seen these T's by BMW M. They look amazing. I can tell you today that the wheel options, you get those lovely ones that you find again in the M3 and the M4, but here, 2021 staggered, which is going to look amazing. And then you get so many other different parts that are really linking this car to that crazy looking homage M car, like the big wing on the rear. This is going to be very exciting looking. You can even get that titanium exhaust system that all of us hate, if you want it. Maybe it looks a bit better in this. No doubt in the future, we'll probably have competition we might have something CS based as well, something that looks a bit more like the homage car, but we have to wait for all of that. Maybe even an M2 EV, who knows? Anything's possible these days. The future is exciting. Now, let me take you inside the car and show you what they've changed inside. Now, what's lovely as you first approach the interior of the new M2 is much like the 3 and the 4, is that first wow you get when you see the gorgeous carbon bucket seats. Just like in the M3 and the M4, they're gorgeous, they save weight, and it's such a theatrical thing as soon as you get near the car. So I love that first impression. The amazing carbon bucket seats, the best ones pretty much that you can get on the market at the moment, all adjustable, etc. And then the lovely curved screen. Like I said, matching the M3 and the M4, punch for punch M2. It's really like having a little M3 Coupé, which is great. Let's jump inside, have a look at the rest of this. This does not look like 2 Series interior, does it? This should not be 2 Series interior. This looks better than the 8 Series. I'm sure the 8 will eventually graduate and it will get, the lovely curved display like the 2, 3 and the 4 now have. But how premium and how high-end is this? BMW and BMW M have not gone down the route of purposely under-designing their entry-level cars so that you have to buy up. To get the nice interior, you got to go for the 3 or the 4 or the 8. They haven't done that. They've given you the 2 Series in the best possible form that it could be. You compare this to the previous 2 Series and the M2, how sparse that was and kind of very, very 1 Series, as I said. It took a lot from 1 Series. This is a big, big upgrade. Now, of course, with the M2, it's got M2 specific stuff. For now, the curved screen, this is the first model that's getting it. It looks great in here. No doubt it will trickle down into the other 2 Series models as well, as we've seen in 3. But at the moment, this looks great. You've got M-specific screens here, which I've been saying for a while, BMW M and BMW in general need to up their game on digital screens. So the driver zone options that you have here, all unique, and they change based on the mode that you're in as well. So you've got the lovely tricolor colours. We've got the heads-up display that we can either have your M content or your navigation content in as well, which is great. Then you can change the content in front of you as well. For example, your M setup can be shown here. You can have how much boost pressure you have, what the engine temperature is, your tyre values as well, which is all important. I love how you can see the BMW M1 in there. How cool is that? Look at that. And that kind of, the retro style of this car, kind of linking back to that as well, which is nice. I love seeing that. You've got your Newton meters and your power as well. So it's nice that BMW M have kind of given you more customization than you've had in the past in a car like the M2 and indeed in the M3, etc. as well. So this is a really good job of making this a bit more personalized. So I like that. Steering wheel exactly the same as the M3 or the M4. Of course, you're going to get the M Performance Parts version as well, but you can see you've got the use of carbon here. We've got the M1 and the M2 buttons. Undoubtedly, the automatic version will have those lovely carbon shift pedals straight out of the M3 and the M4 as well. But yeah, exactly, again, matching the 3 and the 4. Now, unlike the previous M2, we've got the new updated drive mode select here. So, for example, you've got your setup mode, where you can go in here, you've got your engine, your gear shift assistant for the manual, which is, auto blipping, etc. You've got your chassis, steering, brake, M traction control with the 10 different levels as well. So you can set all of this to your own M1 or M2 configuration here on the steering wheel. Then, of course, you have your M mode button as well that you've had in the M3 and the M4. So you've got road, which is your normal view with all the driving assistance. You go then into sport for less driver assistance, so less interference, better for sporty driving, more sporty displays shown, and then finally track mode, which disengages this middle screen and only gives you the information that you need in this screen in front. I see my favorite button in the car as well, which is the exhaust button. Hello, old friend. Remember, guys, exhaust on or else. You must always keep the exhaust button on. I don't care what your excuse is. You keep that on. Okay? The home screen for the M2 is lovely as well. Again, you can see the M1 standing there with your tyre pressures. This has all been set up, so you can change this to any widget that you like. And they've really, really gone to town on how M this looks, which is great. I love the use of the colours. I love the way the widgets look so modern, but they're still easy to read. And it's all very BMW. The font, the numbers they're using here is the type of font that you see on the badging of these cars as well. So the software linking nicely to the physical aspects of the car. And I love the fact that you can really customize this, but it all still looks very M. I'm liking the M DNA. Though me personally, I'm a big fan of analog driver zones, etc. So this whole shift to digital, it comes with great benefits like the customization that we see here, but then the negatives are not having that, you know, like a beautiful watch, you know, having a few dials and stuff that are a bit more analog. Of course, you've lost your BMW shortcut buttons that all you BMW guys love, and just generally less buttons around here than we're used to in a car like the M2. But then so much is handled by the M setup buttons here, etc., that perhaps you don't really need it. Of course, you've got voice control, etc. as well, which is great. But this is the move kind of to the modern world, and I like that BMW and M are now embracing the digital side and making more use of it. That's what's really important. The other thing I love is on the door here, where you have the ambient lighting in the normal 2 Series. You've got the tricolor colours here. How good does that look? Love it. The more M stuff, the better. Structure of the interior is lovely. Of course, in the M2, loads of carbon fibre. Of course, you've got your lovely manual box here. You've got the red start-stop button. Everything basically torn straight out of M3 and M4 and chucked into this. Ambient lighting, as you see in the normal 2 Series. It's a really premium feeling interior. It feels, if you blindfolded me, I would feel like I'm sitting in, you know, a slightly smaller version of the M3 Touring. So quality is high, material use is good. The M colours used around the seats, etc., the look of the seats, it's all very theatrical. And when you jump in this, you're not feeling like you're shortchanged in any way. Of course, we're paying a little bit more for this car versus the old one. So it's important that this gives you some bang for buck. I really like it. I think it's a great interior. Like the internals of the car, it's taking all the best bits of M3 and M4 and putting it into a slightly smaller interior with good space in the back as well, probably more than 4 Series. So yeah, I like it. I like it as a previous M2 customer. This is a great upgrade. So guys, that's your brand new M2, ripping everything out of M3 and M4 into a smaller, sexier package. There are some controversial bits around it, but the real test of this car is when we get behind the wheel. What's it going to be like? Can it differentiate itself enough from its bigger brothers? Can it fill those huge boots that the previous M2 left behind? I don't have the answer to any of those questions yet. All I can tell you is exciting times at 50 years of BMW M. See you guys next time.